Hi everyone, welcome to Everything Dog Training Podcast. I'm John McGuigan, Glasgow dog trainer and behaviour consultant. Welcome. If you are coming back and listening again, thank you for spending time with us again. It reinforces our behaviour to know that we've reinforced your behaviour. And if you're with us for the first time, then we've got two Scots today, myself and Alice. Alice is from Aberdeen, which is about 2.5 hours north of where I am. So for an uneducated ear, then you may not notice many differences, but our accents, if you're from Scotland, are quite different. But Alice has a nice Scottish accent, and much nicer than mine. I always think the further north, well, excuse me for the Fifers here, okay, as soon as you get past Fife and Dundee, the accents become nice. I'm just kidding, okay, before you all start shouting at me, alright. Just a wee bit of joshing towards the Fifers and the Dundonians. You bring it on yourselves, and I'm kidding, okay, so relax. Alright, we get it tight as well, people from Glasgow, and I'm not from Glasgow anyway, I'm from East Kilbride. Okay, so enough nonsense about our accents. What have we got for you today? So we've got our conversation with Alice, which I really enjoyed, and I'll introduce Alice shortly. If you are joining us, if you're new to the channel or new to our podcast, there's a number of ways that we can help you. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook and Instagram. So you can search at Glasgow Dog Trainer on any of those platforms and you'll find all our content. I think I've got over 1,000 videos on Facebook and over 650 or something like that on YouTube. And we're active as I can be, plus running this and my business. We've also got our online training as well. So a number of online courses, which I'll put a link to in the show notes. You can get us there if you need help. So we've got a number of courses for loose lead walking, recall, getting your dog to pay attention to you. Some predatory chase stuff, so getting your dog not to chase rabbits and squirrels and things like that. There's a broad variety of courses there which will help, and if you use the code POD10 you'll get 10% off them. If the code doesn't work, then ping me an email and I'll rectify that for you. I'm always looking for new guests, so I'm looking for interesting people that are aligned ethically with what we promote, which is force-free, positive, reward-based training. Okay, so anything which doesn't rely on anything using pain or fear. So no prong collars, slip leads, choke chains, or electric collars. So we don't use any of those things on our dogs. We look at the function of behaviour, and then we look at ways for us to resolve those problem behaviours so that we can live a more harmonious life with our dogs. And then we also look at our own behaviour as well. So I do some things occasionally when I'm doing a podcast on my own, and I'll talk about some things about my journey through life and how that has helped my interactions with my dogs and other people and their dogs. Okay, so that's what we can do for you. We can also offer online remote consultations, so we do them fairly regularly, and that's all across the world. And I've done them US, Canada, done some in Australia, did one in Dubai, all across Europe and in the UK and Ireland as well. So there's ways that we can help you. Okay, so looking at our interview today, or our discussion today, and it's with Alice Davies. So Alice runs AD Dog Training, a force-free dog walking and training service. Having worked with numerous dogs in a variety of settings, her true passion, or some say obsession, for dog training was ignited and grew alongside her first dog as an adult, Maisie. Maisie has been Alice's companion for over 14 years and has helped her a tremendous amount, but most importantly, how to slow down and be more mindful, which is music to my ears. In recent years, Alice and her family have also welcomed a Romanian rescue, Evie, into their home, who continues to challenge and improve her skills on a daily basis. Taking up dog walking as a part-time job during studies, Alice soon came to the realisation that a full-time career working with dogs was not only possible, but would also be a dream come true. Walking dogs and spending so much time with them and allowing them Walking dogs and spending so much time with them allowed invaluable insight into their behaviour and body language, reading and researching as much as possible and carrying out as many courses during this time. Alice endeavoured to train as much as she could and learn as much as she could about ethical, force-free training to ensure that she was up to date with current knowledge and scientific research. Currently a student with PACT, the Professional Association of Canine Trainers, Alice is always eager to learn more and expand on her expertise. Alice's aim is to help dogs and other humans live happy, harmonious lives. She believes dogs should be allowed to be dogs, but within safe boundaries, ensuring that they can thrive in our human-filled world. Alright, so I really enjoyed this conversation. As I said before, I like all my conversations. I get a lot from all of them, and then hopefully I'll bring that to you. So let's go on to our conversation with Alice. Hi Alice, so thanks for taking time out of your day to join us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, not at all. So where are you in the world?
So I'm Aberdeen based in Scotland, UK.
Okay. It'll be interesting to see if people can tell, because we can tell our accents are quite
Yeah.
different from each other. But I wonder if
I've,
everybody else.
I've been told I've got quite a posh accent at times, so it just depends. Depends how many pints I'm in.
And you can hear, I mean, you can hear the Aberdeen in your accent, but it's not one of some of those impenetrable Don
No,
accents.
no. You
No.
can still understand me a wee bit anyway.
Right, okay. How did you get into that dog training?
So it's been sort of quite a long-winded process, I suppose. Always wanted to work with animals, from the day I can remember. And sort of, did various jobs, including animals, from, kennels as soon as I left school to veterinary practices, and couldn't quite ever find the right sort of career for me with animals. I knew I wanted to work with them, but just how was really my sort of qualms. The pet industry didn't quite sit right with me. Didn't really want to work in a pet shop. As much as I enjoyed my time working in the veterinary practice, again, it wasn't sort of, veterinary nursing and things that hats off to the people that do it, but that wasn't really where my passion was lying. And I suppose it's when I took on my first sort of dog as an adult that really, my passion really started to grow. My dog Maisie, who's now just over 14 years, sort of learnt learnt a lot with her along the way. And sort of just as we went along, we'd get sort of compliments from family members and friends about how well behaved she was. And, it was always a bit of a surprise to me because I thought, I don't feel like I've really put that much into her. I think I've been quite lucky with the dog that she is. And then out on walks, people would stop and make comments on, oh, what a lovely, well-behaved dog she is. And I suppose it sort of went from there. I realized, well, I'm really passionate about it. I love spending time with my dogs, and it sort of went from there. I wanted to learn more and more and more and how to do it sort of properly.
Nice. So, see when people are commenting that your dog is quotes well behaved, what are they?
Mhm.
Are they seeing? What are they seeing? What do they see?
So I suppose it'd be little things like just stepping to the side to let people past. As much as I see Maisie as the perfect peach, she's had her issues as well. Little things that will be a bit of lead reactivity. So if we're on tight paths, we'd maybe step to the side and ask her for a sit and just sort of
Right.
let people go by. And it was just little things like that, and people would go by with maybe an excitable puppy or maybe an adolescent dog and think, you'd almost sort of sense a bit of a tone of almost jealousy sometimes of, oh, she's really well behaved. And I'm thinking, well, it just takes a bit of time and patience, really. And if you get it right, then, it can come quite easily, really.
I wonder because the reason I asked the question because I often wonder if people think that your dog's well behaved is because they don't do anything. So it's the lack of everything, all the obnoxious behaviours that makes the dog well behaved, rather than
Yeah,
where you're doing that's really overt behaviours, moving to the side, paying attention, all the
yeah,
calm.
yeah. I think as well, being, so Maisie's quite a mixed breed. She's part lurcher, sort of silky type. So when she is in the house, she is ultimately quite chilled out as well. She will snooze in front of the fire quite happily. Don't get me wrong, she'll sprint and have a good run and a good adventure when out and about. But yeah, ultimately at home, and around the family and things like that as well. She's one of the dogs that, when you've got these family dogs that everyone sort of dotes on, they're just those sort of those precious poochies is what I would call her. She's just that sort of precious sort of pooch.
So your interest kind of grew from there, from working with Maisie?
Yeah, so I suppose, I grew up with a lot of the sort of TV dog trainers and a lot of sort of advice that didn't really sort of sit right with me. So sort of as Maisie grew and as I grew, we learned a lot together. And again, some of the advice I have been given in the past was just very old school, I would say, quite old school advice. And it just never quite sat right with me. So, I sort of tried to discover, well, how is it that Maisie's got this way? What's made her that way? How did she get to that point of I can go on these adventures with her and have these really nice walks and good times with her.
What about it didn't sit right with you?
Um, Sort of heavy-handedness. I've the old, again, sort of old school hints and tips of rubbing nose into the pee when they've had an accident, or I remember once being advised to pin Maisie when she'd been sort of naughty or so-called naughty, to pin her and show you're sort of boss and you're the dominant one. And I suppose a lot of my family, have been quite strict themselves as well, and it's sort of watching those things and going, okay, well, the look on a dog's face when you sort of get that heavy-handed, and just having them sort of look at you in any way of fear just doesn't, it just doesn't sit right, really, does it?
Oh, I know, I know.
But if the way they look at you, you don't want to break that sort of the bond and the trust that you have with them. And the all these sort of jerking on leads and things. I'm not innocent. I've grown a lot, and as I say, I've learned a lot
Sure,
with
of
Maisie
course.
as well. And and I've not always been perfect. Not that I am now either.
Yeah.
But just jerking leads, all these things, and you see it when you're out and about, and you see those expressions and the body language of the dog, and you think, well, that's just not sitting right with me. That's fear based, and that's something I don't really want to. I don't want people or animals to listen to me because I've installed that fear in them.
Could you see those? So even before you kind of started your more formal education, you were still seeing those behaviours though from the dogs, those body languages, and the that you described there. Why do you think
Yeah.
some people miss it?
It's an age-old question, really, isn't it? Of
Yeah.
I think all too often we get stuck in this trap of, oh, it's just a dog, it's
Yeah.
just an animal,
Yeah.
it's just this, it's just that. And you think, well, you wouldn't say that about your child, would you?
Yeah.
You wouldn't say that about your kids. So they're just kids, so you've
Yeah.
got to give them a heavy hand. You think, well, why does that stop when they become adults?
Yeah.
Why if it's so, why is it okay as children, but then you're taught as adults, well, keep your hands to yourself,
Yeah.
violence isn't the answer. So
Yeah.
and I mean, I spent a lot of time with animals, that I, used to bunk off school to go and help out on stables with
Yeah.
horses and things. I was much happier being around animals than I ever was sort of sitting in a classroom. So I think having that added time and being around them that, so much more, and having a bit of a tricky sort of teenage years where if I could go and groom a horse for half an hour, even muck out their stable, that I felt I could get that connection and form those connection with
Yeah.
those animals. And it was sort of a stress relief, I suppose, and an outlet for me to go and hang out with these wonderful creatures
And
rather than,
were you more chilled at the end of that after doing that?
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I would spend a good whole day around horses and the dogs at the yard as well. And yeah, being outside in general for myself and being around animals in nature is definitely, quite an important thing for me, and I've discovered that more and more as the years have gone on.
And that's interesting because we're going to talk about, so you like we'll talk about enrichment and we'll expand on that. But you've
Mm-hmm.
got, I mean, you just perfectly illustrated that there. You've got, you wanted to bunk off school, which is seen as a bad behaviour in quotes, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And because we have this formal education that we're supposed to do up until we're 16 or 18, depending on where you are in the country. Uh, but you preferred, learnt more, were a happier person and much more productive by going away and working around the horses. And we
Yeah.
get that with our dogs. So it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of square pegs for square holes. But I think sometimes it's not allowing that to open the door to an aversive approach as well, that every dog is different and some dogs need a heavier hand, which they don't.
No, yeah,
Yeah. So
definitely.
you're talking about you wanted to the enrichment part is what you really like. So expand a little bit on that. Tell us some more about that.
So yeah, I'm really interested in what does your dog enjoy doing? What do they really get a kick out of? Is it chasing? Is it catching? Is it, one of my dogs, I've got a rescue, and she really enjoys sort of tearing things apart.
Hmm.
So we use a lot of sort of recycling cardboard tubes, all that sort of thing to sort of reenact that rather than her, not that she tends to rip apart furniture, but
Yeah.
rather than her wanting to pluck pillows, we can redirect her onto to plucking something that's a bit more acceptable, a bit more suitable. And again, really interested in just why do they enjoy doing those things? We talk a lot about the predatory motor patterns in dogs, what those sort of hunting skills, what would lead them on, and picking those parts. What was your dog bred to do? We can start by looking there and then sort of move on. Yeah, okay, obviously each dog is going to be different. Each individual dog, despite their breeds, you can get very different, big differences between the same breed dog. But starting there, what were they bred to do? What are they going to enjoy doing? Were they bred to chase? Were they bred to catch, kill? Whatever it was, and then expand on there. Observe your dog. Really watch what they enjoy doing. Just I always say to clients, just mooch about with your dog. Just go
Yeah.
for a mooch about. Just hang out with them. Don't expect anything. Just watch them, and what do they really like to do, and to be able to take that and harness it and ensure your dog's got a really fulfilled, enriched life. We control so much of their day-to-day life that I think it's really important to try and find ways and outlets for them to act out their natural behaviors, and as I say, in an appropriate manner. So if you've got a dog that enjoys digging but you don't want holes in your garden, let's find a way that they can really get that out in a sand pit or somewhere where it's more
Yeah.
acceptable. Because
Yeah.
again, it's a lot of sort of human centric sort of ideas and with dogs, isn't it? We think that's unacceptable, but the dog thinks that's
Yeah.
great fun, and I've liked to do these with other animals as well. So we've had pet rats in the past, and again, you look at them, and you think, well, we're controlling all their life. They're in a cage. We're controlling when they're fed, when they get out for a play. So trying to find ways that we can really enrich their lives, really make them happy and content with, okay, yeah, they're in a cage, but how can we make this the best sort
Sure.
of life for them,
Yeah.
act out those natural behaviors.
So there's a few things there to expand on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you've got there, you look at what your dog, and this is what it's just for people listening to it because we have to be always trying to think of. I'm always, I suppose it's a life of, or sorry, the last 15 years having to run a social media page and the
Mm-hmm.
what yes butters or the what about or what you're saying is people. So you've got a dog who's stressed and is digging, and they're digging to release stress or probably escape how they're feeling in the situation
Mm-hmm.
versus a
Mm-hmm.
dog who is doing it because they're actually enjoying it.
Yeah, yeah.
How could we tell the difference between those two? So a dog that is maybe chasing other animals around in
Mm-hmm.
a frantic way. I don't know if did you ever see the dog in it was in Crufts and it was round the internet, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was crashing through all the obstacles, and everybody thought it was funny, but there was
Mm,
nothing funny about it. The dog was so
yeah,
stressed and out of
yeah.
control.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
what would we be looking at there to try and tell the difference between those two things?
So I suppose again, you want to really get to know your dog, know their body language, know a dog's canine body language in general, but really get to know your own dog's body language as well. Again, in these situations where you're mooching about with them, really observe what do they do when they're happy? What are the signs when they're stressed? You've got the telltale lip licking, panting, really excessive, excitable behavior. And again, just really getting to know your dog as an individual and just sort of we talk about thresholds a lot in training as well, and ensuring they're not, I tend to sort of describe it as a level of 1 to sort of 10, making sure you're not getting beyond that sort of
Five,
they're
six,
having
seven.
too much fun or too stressed that it's going to implode.
Yeah. And um when you're saying there about the looking at the dog's body language, it's important that it's in relation to what else is going on in the environment as well, isn't it? So
Yeah,
we have to
yeah,
be have.
context.
So how do you give your clients tips of how to so we can observe the dog all day long, but if we're
Yeah.
not aware of why the dog's body language changes. So just now, Logan's lying on the bed. About 5 or 6 minutes ago, oh sorry, just before our call actually, so it was 20 minutes ago. Um, my son was in the kitchen and he put something down on the kitchen cabinet or kitchen counter and it sounded like the door knocking, right? And he jumped off the bed and ran to the front door. Okay.
Hmm.
And so that there is in response to the noise which he has misread.
Yeah.
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 So what tips do you give your clients to observe or to help observe? It's not just the body language itself, it's the change in response to things
Yeah.
is changing in the environment.
So we talk about context a lot as well. So, lip licking, if you've just produced a tasty morsel of food, then it's likely they'll be licking their lips to
Yeah.
in response to the food. A shake off, okay, if they've just been in a pool of water, if they've maybe just had a roll around in the grass, then the shake off in that sense, it could be quite a normal, natural movement. Not that a shake off's not natural in other senses as well,
Yeah.
but you can then change it to, if a dog's been in a stressful situation, maybe it's seen a trigger another dog or whatever sort of stresses that dog out, and then the shake off happens after. So I
Yeah.
try and keep it contextual, what's happened in that moment, what's happened in the lead up to that body language, and try and see it in more of sort of a, I don't know if holistic's the right sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
word, but
Yeah. Yeah. Just
in
a
a
slight,
holistic sort of group.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a bigger
Mhm.
picture. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So don't just look at the body language, but look at everything that's going around the dog as well.
Yeah. And if we look at that shake off, so we've got a few things there with the shake off. You've got what function has it got? So if you the easy, I think women are probably better able to relate to this. So, when you see women kind of adjusting their bra, right? Okay. And then with guys, a lot of times, so if I'm training, I wear the Under Armour, the rash guard, and it's
Hmm.
tight. So if you're moving, it starts to creep up and becomes uncomfortable. And plus, you don't want your belly shown, so guys certainly don't, right? Most of us, right? So you'll maybe
Not.
adjust, you'll maybe adjust your rash guard, your t-shirt back again. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so the dog's shaking off because maybe the collar or a harness has become slightly out of place. We've got
Hmm.
that reason for shake
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
They have a nice but exciting interaction with another dog, and they'll shake off because they're just a bit bristly. Okay,
Yeah.
they've got a shake. They might shake off because they've had a contentious interaction with another dog, either mildly to severely.
Yeah.
Okay. But what's also interesting with that is if you expect, and this is, I think, just what you're saying about the keen observation. If your dog has a contentious interaction, so something's gone, they've not liked it, okay, and the dog's stuck their nose up their backside when you're trying to leave or something like this,
Hmm.
and your dog doesn't shake off, it's either because they're not bothered by it or they're not yet ready to, and they're holding on to that,
Yeah.
which
Hmm.
means that the next episode may be worse than the previous
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be that trigger stacking in the long run. Yeah. Yeah. I quite often recommend to people to do it themselves as well,
Yeah, I do that as
to
well.
have a little shake off,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
started doing it myself, not necessarily a full shake. I mean, I do, so if any other dog walkers or people spot me, they might think, what's that weirdo doing in the fields again? But
Yeah.
I do, and some of the advice you get for stress and anxiety as well, it's to really clench yourself tight, really
Yeah.
tense all the muscles and then completely loosen them. And if you find even doing things like that yourself can help you get through
Yeah.
certain stressful situations. No, it
Yeah.
doesn't work all the time, but
No, but that big deep breath into your belly, softening your
yeah,
shoulders.
yeah,
I don't know if you just as you were saying that there, you maybe if you rewind, if you listen to this, rewind this 30 seconds, you might hear me resetting my jaw because I moved my jaw left and right and it clicked on both sides. So that's one where because lots of people hold it because they scrunch their
Yeah.
shoulders up and it pulls tension into their neck and then their jaw
Hmm.
comes
Yeah.
slightly out of alignment. And
Yeah.
our dogs are feeling that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
So tell us a bit more about when you're saying about the predatory action sequence or predatory motor patterns. What type? So we talked about what the dog's bred for, but what type of things are we seeing in it? Because one of the previous episodes I talked about this, but it's always interesting to get more information on it.
So you're looking at your sort of what a dog will do. So if you look at really primal, wolves, you're looking at the pattern that leads up to the hunt, the chase, so it's your stalking, you're orienting, you're looking for the animals. So that would be your things like your collies and your herders and things, they tend to stalk, and then chase would be part. So we've taken those and we've really honed into each of those sequence. You go from your orient to your chase to your grab. I'm probably missing quite a few here as I go on.
Yeah, yeah,
And then each breed has, in the past been bred to specifically follow those roles, as say with the collies and the stock, and then you've got your guard dogs and things as well that are more of your with the guarding, sort of
yeah,
less
yeah,
of the
yeah,
chasing side. You don't want really the biting side necessarily.
yeah.
And how we as humans have really bred these
Selected
into,
for them.
yeah, selected, that's the
Yeah,
right word, yeah,
yeah,
selected for those traits. um and I find it really interesting when you see, there was a cartoon going around online that I spotted, and you would take, a picture of a collie when it was, working line and doing a job, and then you
yeah,
transport that collie into someone's home,
yeah,
and then the captions were something like, so why, they used to act like this, so why do you expect them to act like that
yeah, yeah.
within the home as well? And I find that really interesting too, making sure you're getting the right dog to suit your environment, to your needs, to your energy levels as well. And if you have got a high energy dog, how can we find ways to release that, and using them as well to build confidence, not just only to harness their training or to keep them sort of happy and content, but also how can we use these to build up their confidence and make them feel happy and more secure in our human filled world.
Yeah. So we've got a collie. So the eyeing and the stalking of the collie. Okay, and the collie wants to control the movement of the sheep. Yeah. And lots of people will misunderstand that the dog wants to chase, whereas a collie doesn't want to chase. It's more interested in keeping the animal, keeping the sheep stationary. Sorry, something's happened to my screen here. Sorry.
So
There
I
we
think
go.
it just
Oh, don't know what's happened there. There we go. Right. Okay. So we throw the ball for the collie, and the collie chases it and brings it back and then drops it at our feet. And then we think that the dog's enjoyed the chase. So we pick it up again and we throw it. And same as with spaniels. Spaniels are really, and I've got two ex-police dogs just now who have done the same thing. Everything is about this ball, and the
mm-hmm.
dog now can't do much else when the ball is on the go because uh, everything the dog's been so deprived that the ball comes out and that's its whole world. And then we put the ball away and the dog goes away because that's what we do with our working dogs, with our working police dogs. So how do we now that's obviously not good for the collie, the spaniel, or the German Shepherd or Malinois. How do we create a more enriched life for those dogs? So
The
if
ones that are
that's our
sort of,
starting point, yeah, how
yeah,
do we
yeah.
start expanding that out?
I think also on the flip side of it, ensuring they're not getting too obsessed with those jobs. They aren't. I think, one thing I always say, as much as I enjoy the enrichment and keeping your dogs active and content in that sense, it's also really important to teach them to switch off.
Yeah,
To switch off and settle down afterwards. So even potentially adding in some rules to these games, or trying to redirect and encourage something else. I've walked a collie for a while who was stick obsessed, and I
hmm
think potentially was getting sticks thrown for at home.
okay,
It's not something I tend to condone. I do try and, if I'm on a group walk, especially, try and don't tend to take toys and things out just to prevent any, mostly from getting lost constantly.
yeah,
Um, So when I first started walking her, obviously it was a case of she'd find a stick, drop it at my feet, and then there'd be, non-stop sort of barking to pick it
Yeah.
up and
Throw
throw,
the stick,
which
throw the stick, throw the
throw the
stick.
stick, please throw the stick, just throw the stick. And you'd sometimes get other people, thinking, walking past, thinking I'm being cruel and saying, please don't throw the stick, or trying to actually teach her not to be so obsessed, trying to give her something else to do. So in that example, I would either sort of throw a treat off into the side for it, usually in sort of, rather than, so, some dogs, I might drop them down quite close to me, whereas for this collie, she didn't particularly enjoy getting too close for you to start with anyway. And
Hmm.
again, you can see she really enjoyed those, those herding movements, those sort of circular sort
Yeah.
of movements. So throwing a treat into the side and getting her to sort of engage with sniffing a lot of the time as well. Because one thing I noticed is that's all she'd be obsessed with is the stick, stick, stick.
Yeah.
So also on the flip side, switching her off and saying, right, well, go calm yourself down a little bit, maybe have a little bit of a sniff and explore your surroundings as well. Because being that obsessed, she's not really going to be taking in
Yeah.
much else of what's going around, and that could lead to further problems as well. So
Yeah.
we're
So
trying
you
to,
stand there, because with dogs like that, you stand there with a stick in your hand and a nuclear explosion could go off behind the dog and the dog wouldn't even notice.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't, or she would get a fright, if another dog, maybe
Of
an
course.
off lead dog came up to her, then she could get startled. And so it started trying to make her a bit more of aware, so there's a fine line, isn't there, of
Yeah.
between making sure they're enriched and that enrichment's not going into an obsession or
Yeah.
a compulsive disorder.
And what would be the indicators for that to make sure that we're not getting, so even without it being full blown into a kind of disorder, but
Hmm, hmm.
if we don't keep it, um, and this is actually balanced, right? So without it going into a full blown disorder, but it can start. The disorder has to start somewhere, and then there's something which is a precursor to that, and then a precursor to that again, and then somewhere
Hmm.
back along that line, we're in some sort of balance between um, enrichment, food, rest, and recuperation, and all these things. So what are the signs for people to look out when the dog starts becoming
Getting
too
that bit.
reliant on the ball, the stick to be thrown?
Yeah,
What would we look for that there?
I think again when if they're so obsessed that they're only ever focusing in on you, they can't, that level of not being able to switch off. I quite often see it in their eyes a lot of the
Mhm.
time. I don't know about yourself, but that sort of high wired, the sort of eyes start to dilate. They're a bit wider than normal,
Yeah,
sort of giving you the crazy eyes. Excessive barking, the jumping up to potentially get toys out of your hands, or the balls out your pocket, whatever
yeah,
it may be. But that's sort of frantic, unable to sort of switch off. You see it in kids sometimes as well.
yeah,
When they've got that sugar rush, the eyes go wide, and you
yeah,
start saying things like, "Right, this is all going to end in tears."
yeah, absolutely.
Um, in fact, it was one of my pals' collies actually once got so high wired that one of his eyes dilated and the other didn't. It
Oh
was
wow,
one
okay.
people and one small pupil, and that
Yeah.
was a point when I went, this
No,
is going to
that's
end.
not good at
So
all.
we need to calm him down here,
Yeah,
because this is going to end. He wasn't, no harm to anyone, but you could see he was going to start bouncing off the walls at any
yeah,
moment, and that was right. We don't want to hype this dog up. We need to start settling him
yeah,
down here. So yeah, so that's sort of that frantic behavior, that inability to switch off, and when I walk dogs or my own dogs, I like them to have a bit of a mixture
yeah.
throughout their walks, some snuffling, sniffing through the long grass, and then, be able to come back off and then switch off from the
Yeah.
game they're playing or their job they're doing, and be able to then re-engage with the environment as well.
Yeah. Why do you think that people allow that to happen? Do you think it's because we can keep our dog under control so much or so well by using the ball or the stick, and we don't need to worry about anything else?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, even when you bump into people, that they'll have a ball, or the ball catcher, and they'll maybe say something, or I'll say, oh, look, they're being well behaved, and they go, as long as we've got the ball, and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
think, okay, well, so yeah, a lot of the time I do think it's that control of, okay, well, if I've got this ball here, they're only focused in on me, so therefore, they're under control. I think a lot of the time as well, people are under the impression that you need to constantly exercise your dog. If you've got a high energy dog, you need to just keep them running, keep them going, keep them going, keep them going. And a lot of the time, what they don't realize is you're going to end up with an adrenaline junkie. You know,
Yeah,
you're going to end up with a dog that needs that constantly. You know, and it's all with good intentions. You know, you quite often hear of, I've taken them for a walk. They're still high wired, so I've gone out into the garden and we've played a bit of ball for a bit longer. And again, it's all good intentions. They think, oh well, they're obviously still hyper, so let's tire them out. When really, when you think of it as you know, on a hormone and a chemical level, they're still wired to anything. You know, you've got all this adrenaline coursing through them. You really want to sort of level them out and calm them down. So sort of situations like that, I actually recommend, okay, go for your walk, but then come back and do something a bit calmer, you know, get a lick mat, a Kong, you know, settle them down, try and bring those, you know, those hormones back down again.
yeah.
So I think, again, it's all good intentions, but
Yeah, yeah.
just not informed.
We see that, I think, so we get that, because I always try and give people human analogies so that we can have some sort of empathy for how the dog's feeling or what's going on with the dog, you know. So when we are tired and hungry, that's not a good combination.
Oh no,
Right?
definitely
Absolutely
not. You don't
not.
want to see me hungry.
No, absolutely right. And that we've got that word for it, right?
Yeah.
And we then, in our own study of ourselves and how to live better humans, you've then got, am I actually annoyed or am I just hungry?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then it's, am I hungry or just thirsty? You know, so it's the whole thing. If like people say that I'm really hungry, we'll take 2 glasses of water first and see if that, you know, if you're still as hungry as that, because you might just be dehydrated and you can't tell the difference. There's like the UFC fighter from 20 years ago, 15 years ago, called Vitor Belfort. And I remember once seeing him at the weigh-in. The weigh-in is the day before. So they're a lot of the time they're easily 10 kilos heavier the next day for the fight. You see him at the weigh-in and you see him before the fight starts and looks like a different person because they've dehydrated and taken on all the carbs. So he turns up having trained really intensely, probably on steroids as well, you know, and whole body's collapsed and dehydrated. I mean, he looked magnificent, you know, but he was so tightly wound, you know, I mean, like so unbelievable, like his eyes were bulging just as you were describing there. And then his opponent said something to him at the weigh-in that he didn't like, and there was a big fight on stage and blah, 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 right? And I get it, a lot of this is for show, for hype.
Yeah.
But we were watching it and we're like, you need a big bowl of pasta, a baked potato with cheese and go and have a nap and then not do any training for the next week.
You
know, and then go back into the gym at a moderate level. So when we've got people with those collies, I'd take them out for a walk again. Well, you're going to make the dog more tired, more thirsty, hungrier, you know, hotter.
More cranky.
Yeah. Where it's actually those soothing exercises. So licky mats, Kongs, what other things can we do?
So I personally really like, and I know it's not ideal for everyone, but I quite enjoy finding things at home that we can use. You know, I do personally store up all our recycling, you know, and for Evie especially. And again, it's not ideal for everyone because you do tend to have tissue and bits of paper to keep up. But for me, you know, I'm trying and be a little bit sort of eco green conscious. At least then you can just throw it in the recycling and you're done with it. So I'll do something. I call it a busy box, but it's just a cardboard box, you know, just anything out you're recycling, some of her dry food scattered in there, you know, as I say, toilet roll tubes, maybe stuffed. And again, that suits her because she enjoys, if you think back to the predatory sequence of that plucking and dissecting, that's something she really enjoys doing. So rather than spending loads and loads of money on teddies and toys that she's going to get through in 5 minutes, you know, we build up a box like this for her. And not only that, but with her being, she's a rescue from Romania.
Okay.
So she's quite a nervous, very confident in some areas, but sort of, as you can imagine, never living in a home and all that sort of things, that she's not the most confident in other areas. So there's times where we might not get out for a walk if it's high winds, if it's busy outside, you know, we might not get out and about with her. So doing something like that, something that we can create at home, throw loads of, you know, some toys, different toys with different textures that'll make different sounds as well as she's sort of digging through to sort of get food out of it. we sometimes do it on a bigger scale with a ball pit.
Okay,
So,
nice.
which again, we had, well, I can't remember now, a good few months ago, quite bad storms. So even getting her out the front door, that wasn't going to be, the banging and crashing and things.
Sure.
She just wasn't feeling it. So filled up a ball pit, balls again, toys. I make something called food bombs. Obviously you've got to be careful with. If we did this for Maisie, our older dog, who's been a bit more pampered throughout her life, she would likely eat the paper.
Yeah.
So we adapt it for her. So if we're doing something like that with her, it's usually toys or maybe a rolled up blanket with some of her scattered food in there. Whereas with Evie, I know I watch her carefully, and she'll pluck it. She'll do something with it anyway.
Yeah.
Make a big mess usually.
Yeah.
So things like that, just finding things around the home, the old twisted towel, I don't know if you do that yourself.
Yeah.
A tea towel or a dog blanket, bit of food, twist it up, and again getting them using their noses, they're snuffling. And if you think to how they would hunt and forage, way back when, obviously they're not doing so much of that now, and well, not in our home anyway. It's in the garden. Trying to recreate that, recreate them using their noses, having to snuffle through things and find it. And the example I used, the day of that storm when she did have the ball pit, and it only took her about 15-20 minutes to get through all and find all the food, but she then slept. She was napping for a good couple of hours after that, and that, in those moments when you can't get out for a walk for whatever reason, that can be a really nice way to sort of substitute it, keep her a bit active, keep her brain busy, and then also tire her out in the long term as well.
And what we've got there is, and again, it's just I had a client today, and he was there's some emotional stuff going on with the dog. The dog's finding certain parts of his life challenging, and he said, after we do this activity, the dog will sleep. And I said, cool. I says, but you have to be careful that the dog's not just doing it because he's now exhausted. So when Maisie goes around that bear, the ball pit, the bear pit, the ball pit.
That's a bit too much enrichment.
Yeah, I know. Right, the ball pit. Goes around the ball pit. So it's challenging enough, it's difficult enough that it becomes challenging, but not so difficult that it's so exhausting for her to work for those prizes.
Yeah.
And now she's like, so it's like a really nice session at the gym, or going to a seminar where your brain's challenged, but you go, all right, I now need to go home and think about that and relax and process it, versus being hammered at work, for 6 weeks.
Again, it's a fine line, isn't it? And it's going back to really getting to know your own dogs as individuals as well. So with Maisie, she's been a little bit more pampered. She's just over 14. She was my first dog, so enrichment wasn't really much of a thing back then. So she, will eat through paper. So we have to keep it nice and easy for her. But even with Evie, we don't know her history at all. We adopted her from she was in a foster home before we got her, and even then they weren't sure whether she was found on the streets or in a shelter, or what the history was there. So we do need to be a bit careful with her behavior, and also with things like resource garden. So you don't want to make it too difficult that she's actually only frantically trying to get the food out. It's to begin with, it was just a cardboard box with some food in it. It was very, very basic. And once they build that confidence and they've done it a few times and they're a bit more happy with doing it, you can sort of increase the difficulty over time. But again, making sure it's not tipping it over into frustration. It's, I do remember I made a bit of a boo-boo with a puzzle toy, and I remember feeding and thinking, oh, she is really smart, I have to say. She makes training quite easy because she's a clever cookie. But when I watched the video back, I was looking at it, and when I could really slow it down and actually observe it, I was thinking that's looking a bit on the frantic side, and I actually stopped using that feeder for a while, because I thought, well, actually, I don't want her to be frantically, desperately trying to get this food when she's been a dog that we don't know her history. She might have had to be fighting for that food on the streets. So again, it's as much as not using the word balance too much. It's a fine line, though, isn't it?
The thing is, and this is what I remember talking to, I think it was Susan Friedman at a seminar, and I think she was either balanced or whispering. It's one of those two words. And she was like, we want our word back.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and so I mean, if you follow me on social media, I don't ever refer to them as balanced trainers. I call them so-called, in quotes, balanced
Yeah.
trainers, because
Yeah.
there's nothing balanced about it at all. There's nothing in balance about it. The dog's not balanced, they're not balanced, and to get kind of geeky on it, that system of those four, in quotes, quadrants that they're relying on aren't in balance either. Okay, so it's not. So, as an example of that, the minimum, if you have a bad experience with one person, the minimum that you need, absolute minimum to get back on an even keel, is three good
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah.
All right, but that's still in your mind. And the
Yeah.
worse that bad experience is, the more it's going to take to get back.
Hmm.
So they're not balanced anyway. You
No.
know, so you're
I
like,
remember.
yeah, we want our word back.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have it back. Thanks. Give it back.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I always remember someone, a moment where I can't remember who it was, whether it was a family member, explaining that actually, if you look at people that are abused, if you're abused all the time or not at all,
yeah,
that either one of those isn't as bad as if it's sometimes but not all the time.
yeah,
If you're living in that perpetual fear of, okay, well, it's not happening today, it's not happening today, but it could happen,
yeah,
that psychologically is so much worse than if it's just a consistent, it's a consistency thing, isn't
yeah,
it? It's not that saying
yeah.
anyone should be abusing anyone
No, I
consistently,
know.
but that mixture of that fear of, oh well, it could come today is much more detrimental in the
Absolutely.
long run. So yeah,
Because
there's
there's no
nothing.
certainty.
No, well,
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, then you're forever in that state of sort of fight or flight, really, aren't you? You're sort of
absolutely.
going to be forever in that sort of freeze
Yeah,
mode of what's coming next.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Perfect. Okay. Anything else you'd like to talk about before we finish up?
Nothing that springs to mind that wouldn't get me into a massive tangent into other things. Some
Tangents
say
are always good. We
obsessed.
can always come back on, do some more.
That would be wonderful.
Tangential conversations are always fun. Just try to
Yeah.
circle it back round. I always think that's like the old Billy Connolly, when he was doing stand-ups, when it was a stand-up and he was telling stories, and then he would shoot off left and right and always circle back round to the original story, because you're like, what happened to the original guy?
My partner's always thinking that. He's like, what was the point of this story again?
Yeah, I know. And I have, when I'm
Honestly.
presenting, I do that as well. I go, I'm not just telling an interesting story. There was a point to this, but the point has been drawn up, but to illustrate what we're talking about. Awesome.
There's just
Okay.
so much to be said in this field, though, isn't there, at the end
No,
of the day?
I know. Which is why I
Fascinating
want to
things.
try and get different voices on so that we can
Yeah,
talk about different things, because what you've said will resonate with some people better than anything that
yeah,
I've said, and other ways around as well. So,
yeah.
okay, so we ask a question at the end of the show that a previous guest has asked, and somebody has asked, if you weren't in dog training, if that dog training wasn't your career, what other career would you do?
So I was actually, I'm still in the process of actually gaining an environmental science degree.
Oh,
So
nice. Okay.
I would have probably gone down, or I was sort of going down the route of something to do with sort of rewilding, to be honest. I
Okay.
think that would be something I'd be really like, being a ranger or focusing on how to rewild on Scotland, really. I
Yeah.
think that would be fascinating. Anything outdoors, but
Yeah.
if I can do outdoors and dogs, then that is just a dream come true. So
I don't know if you saw it today. They've just reintroduced pine martens down south somewhere.
okay,
So I
brilliant.
don't know if it's
Yeah.
Somerset, Devon, Cornwall down there, but it's
Mm.
it's somewhere down south, like I think below London, and they've just reintroduced the first time in 100 years.
Wow,
Yeah,
brilliant. Yeah,
aye,
yeah.
absolutely.
So that would have been the type of thing that I would have loved to do, something that could involve, because again, when I was trying to swither between, I wanted to work with animals, but the pet industry just didn't sort of sit right with me, if
Yeah,
that makes sense. So I sort of wanted to lean towards sort of nature and the natural environment, and how can I help animals in a natural environment as well. But again, I can be with dogs in a natural environment, so it's
yeah.
a
So
win-win for me. I can't complain. Apart from the rubbish Scottish weather, other than
yeah, I
that,
know, I know. No bad weather,
what
just bad clothing.
exactly. I've felt well stocked with waterproofs
Yeah, I
and
know.
walking boots. So
They've got I think our big country park, Pollock. I think I saw a post up the other day, and it said that had there's otters in Pollock Park.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know whether they've come back naturally because the river's now cleaner, or whether
Hmm.
they have been reintroduced there because the river's cleaner and there's more fish in there now.
Yeah. Oh,
But
that's
I'm going to
good.
go up and try and, because I'd like to. I've never seen an otter in the wild.
No, I'm the same. We I think we get them we definitely get them in the River Dun up here,
Yeah,
but I've
yeah.
never spotted them. My dad's always really good for he's always up at stupid o'clock and stupid hours, so he tends to he tends to catch these sort of things. But yeah, no, I've spotted a pine. Well, I'm almost certain I've spotted a pine marten before.
Oh, nice. Okay,
When I was
cool.
camping once, so but I didn't have my glasses on at the time. It was either that or it was an escaped red panda, so we'll never know. Don't know how many of those are running around the Highlands of Scotland,
And
but
plus, the red panda's a little bit bigger than a pine marten.
yeah, we bit. So we'll go with pine marten. It must have been.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. Thank you.
It's been lovely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.